Next component I'm going to style is app. May as well do it next before we do the other subcomponents. So let's go to app CSS. Oh yeah, this is the stuff that was already in there from Create React App, right? And if we look at our static CSS, we see some stuff that isn't really scoped to any particular component, and then we do see one rule for app. So let's just copy all these, throw in the app CSS, and just get rid of everything that's already in there. So we import a couple of Google fonts, Fauna 1 and Oxygen. We import Font Awesome.
Did you do everything above the .app?
Yes, yes, everything up to and including the .app. This next rule, the asterisk, means match every single element. Box sizing, border box. So the box model in CSS is a little strange. For a long time, it was implemented completely differently in different browsers. And when they did settle on a standard, they arguably chose wrong. Because we have the actual element, its padding, a border, and a margin. Those are the things in the box model. If you inspect an element in the developer tools down here at the bottom, you see the box model represented. So the actual element, the padding, the border, the margin, in that order. And the question is, does the padding count as part of the width or not? It's inside the border. And the answer is the box model decided, now I've got myself confused. No, because that also changed with border box. But now I've got myself confused. So the box sizing property in CSS. Box sizing property is used to alter the default CSS box model used to calculate width and height of the element. It is possible to use this property to emulate the behavior of browsers that do not correctly support the CSS box model specification. So let's read this little thing real quick about CSS box model. Here's the actual width. Here's the padding. Here's the border. Each box has 4 edges, blah, blah, blah. The padding area extends, blah, 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 border area, margin area, blah, blah, blah. The thing is, there's no way to say that you want the thing plus its padding to take up a certain amount of space. You can say how much the thing takes up, and you can say how much padding should be there, but there was no good way to say, well, I mean, the part that's inside the border is kind of the thing I want to make sure takes up a certain amount of space. And there was no way to do that as like a percentage. So figuring out what you need to set the padding and width to if you needed that to happen was kind of a pain in the neck. And box sizing border box makes it a lot easier to figure this out. So border box, the width and height properties include the content, the padding, and the border, but not the margin. So back in the day when different browsers did it differently, this is how Internet Explorer behaved. Now, curses to them for not doing it the way that the standard said, but honestly, their way was a lot easier to work with. It's just that they were the only ones doing it. So this border box rule lets us get that behavior, which most of the time when you're specifying how much width something should take up, you mean including the padding and the border. So we just say, for everything in this app, we're going to use that model. By selecting the HTML element itself, not even the body, but the entire root, and setting the font size to 10 pixels, what that does is set one rim to 10 pixels instead of 16, which is the typical default. Which we're doing simply because when I first built this thing, I started out using the Bootstrap framework, and it sets a rim to 10 pixels. And so I kind of based all of my values on that. So I'm going to do that 10's a little easier to work with than 8 sometimes. But it's usually 16, and I usually don't override it. But I did this time because that's how I built it. Then we have the default font size on the body of 14 pixels. So we're not actually making things that small. We're just setting a rim to that small. So it's a little easier to figure out percentages of that. Line height, we're setting to a certain value. Margin of 0 on the body. Otherwise, everything would have a little bit of margin on it. Image vertical align middle. There are some cases where that actually does what you want it to. And then we set the default font family for the whole page to Oxygen, one of the Google fonts that we pulled in. If that's not there, not available, then we go to Helvetica, then Arial, etc. And there was another rule I expected to be in there that I don't see. So I'm going to throw it in here. And that is for all of the headings on the page, H1 through 5. I'm going to set the font family to Fauna 1, the other Google font that I imported. And I'm going to make them this lovely blue color. So I will copy, since that rule wasn't even in there, I'm going to copy and paste that. So that's our app component. Let's see, what did that actually do for us? Not much. It still looks awful. Now this stuff's over here. Sweet. So how about main? That seems like the next thing to do, probably. Go ahead and commit this, though. Style, the app component. Oops.